What makes an amazing Zelda game? Is it the wonderful storytelling? Maybe the super diverse list of characters? Or even could be the combat? After watching a few trailers and seeing the cover art and maybe an IGN review, I at first thought The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom wouldn't have any of this cool stuff. I recently had the chance to play Nintendo's latest Zelda game, and in this video we're going to take a closer look at it and decide if the game lives up to the hype or falls flat as one of the worst Zelda games yet. Having not played a new Zelda game in quite some time, a couple years now, I was pretty excited to get my hands on this game and try The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. It was actually surprisingly difficult to find during the holiday season. I think I picked it up just after Christmas, but I eventually found a single copy at my local Target for the retail price of $59.99, which seems to be kind of the standard for standalone Nintendo games at this point. Regardless, I took out my credit card and forked it over to Miyamoto and bought the stupid game. Now, I really am a bit of a purist when it comes to not spoiling games before I play them, and I really stuck true to that. I did read a couple of reviews on the game, which even that I try not to do. Beyond that, I was really going in blind. So like a kid on Christmas, when I got home, I ran up to my room, opened the game, popped it in my Switch, sat on my couch, opened a can of Mountain Dew, and began my adventure. Now, at first, I really thought I wasn't going to like the art style of this game. I saw the Link's Awakening remake, and I was a bit turned off. I didn't actually even buy the game. I will probably at some point, but for now, I was just a bit, I wasn't sure what to expect. But truthfully, even the very first time I looked at the startup screen and watched the very first scene, I was kind of hooked. It's definitely not what I think of when I think of The Legend of Zelda, but I'm going into this game with a completely different mindset of that this is just a new game, which it is. And if I look at it that way, I do kind of enjoy the art style. You start the game as a cartoon version of Link with max hearts, a sword, a bow, bombs, and all the add-ons. And right away, the first thing I noticed was, wow, this game feels really good to play. The movement feels super crisp, and it's just a little bit hard to describe, but it just felt really good to use the controls playing as Link. Now, just a caveat, I was using a Switch Pro controller, so your results may vary if you're using the Switch in handheld mode or some other type of controller. But man, the movement felt super accurate, jumping felt great, and the little spin move that you can do, similar to like Deku Link in Majora's Mask, was just an absolute treat, and it was extremely addictive, I'll be honest. I was spinning around the whole game. I think you do move slightly faster, but even if you did move any faster, I was still going to be doing it the whole time I played. But about 5 minutes and one pig Ganon later, Link is sent back into a void, and Zelda is left to go save Link. Oh, how the tables have turned. Now, I do kind of like the idea of getting to play as Princess Zelda instead of Link. It is a nice little change. Eventually, you escape the cave that you were trapped in, you make your way back to Hyrule Castle, which, by the way, this game takes place in Hyrule, and you'll notice a lot of the similar characters from other Zelda games. But anyways, you make it back to Hyrule, and you find that your father, the king of Hyrule, has been possessed by something and throws you in jail and blah 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 blah. Eventually, you escape jail by being introduced to Tree, who is a magical fairy that provides Princess Zelda with the Tree Rod, which allows Princess Zelda to create echoes. Basically, echoes are copies of monsters and items found all around the world of Hyrule. The rod can also be used to latch onto and move non-echoed items and monsters, and this can be very helpful. We'll talk more about this later. That's basically it for the backstory. Now we start the adventure, and we'll talk more about the world itself. The whole game takes place in two different realms, Hyrule and the Still World, which is connected to Hyrule through rifts that are located in each different section of the world of Hyrule. All of the terrain, people, and objects inside of the rifts are frozen in time, and Tree and Zelda are able to enter these rifts and basically close them up. The game takes advantage of both 2 and 3D assets, allowing for not only a top-down experience, but also a side view in a lot of the caves and dungeons. I found both of these perspectives to be very enjoyable and pretty well thought out. It was mentioned a few times that developers had kind of a hard time designing the different echoes and balancing them because of the two different perspectives. There are some times where this is noticeable, but overall I think the team did a pretty good job of balancing for both the top-down and the side view. I found these rifts to be a cool addition to the game, although outside of the main rifts that needed to be closed, the sub-rifts felt a little bit tedious and it almost felt like they had to be done. But just knowing that when you completed the rift that tree would level up and your echoes would become stronger was a good incentive to do them. When exploring Hyrule outside of the rifts, you'll find that there's different zones, and a lot of these zones will be fairly recognizable to people who've played Zelda games in the past. Gerudo, Goron, Zora, and Deku are all people who live within this version of Hyrule, and each of them have a small sub-story in their respective zones that's definitely worth exploring. My only gripe is that a lot of these stories just weren't very long, and I wish that the team would have put a little bit more into each of the storylines of the different groups of people. In particular, the Goron subquest just felt somewhat bland and uninspired. The gameplay was fun enough, but even still, it just didn't feel like it had the same life as some of the other zones. Contrast that with the Jabul Waters, or the Zora region, which, funny enough, the Great Bay area and Lake Hylia were both my least favorite zones in other Zelda games. This zone was extremely colorful, and the addition of Lord Jabu Jabu made the experience quite enjoyable for us old heads. Beyond even that, the story in this zone felt a little bit more fleshed out than the other zones, and I really appreciated that. My only complaint with the World of Hyrule and Echoes of Wisdom is that even really early into the game, I found that some of the echoes were a bit overpowered, and it felt like I didn't need to explore that much because I could just get over top of things with different echoes. I'm looking at you, Platboom. This meant navigating the world was just a bit too easy, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, but I found myself using gimmicks and tricks to get around things that maybe could have been just a little bit more exploratory. Alright, let's talk a little bit about echoes and the role that they play in this game. They definitely add a lot of variety, especially when it comes to combat and the typical combat that we're used to in Legend of Zelda games, which is, so to say, you take a weapon, smash, and the enemy dies. And sure, we're doing that here too, but the difference is we can now light the enemies on fire with a Wizrobe if we want to. You can really get creative with the different kind of things that you want to do as far as combat or movement or anything like that. You can really use the echoes to your heart's content and pretty much do whatever you want to do. Kind of like I mentioned before, there are a lot of echoes that seem to be a little bit overpowered. As far as the combat echoes go, the Dark Nut level 3, especially for ground combat, is, well, it's really, really good. Granted, you don't really get it till the end of the game, but even still, I found pretty much using the Dark Nut level 3 exclusively for boss fights. As far as water combat goes, the Shark was also extremely good, and I used it almost exclusively, even for the final boss. For utility echoes, like I said, the Platboom kind of takes the cake here, but also the bed, the platform that moves through the air, and the water block are all echoes that are extremely powerful and allow you to basically move anywhere in the map that you want to. I did feel that these echoes were a bit too strong, especially considering the locations that they were found. I would say it wouldn't have been a bad idea to maybe limit the echoes to where they could be used, but that's not really fun either, so hard to say what could have been done different. For you collectors out there, there are 127 different echoes that you can collect throughout the world. During my playthrough, I caught 113. I say caught like it's a Pokemon. It's kind of how it feels, but I got 113 echoes, and I really didn't go out of my way to get any. I did once I beat the game, but that was much after the fact. Playing through the game without even trying to find any, 113, which I think is a pretty good number overall. I don't think that the echoes are meant to be hard to find, but definitely getting 127 without looking for them won't be as easy as it seems. Okay, let me say this right away, and by no means am I an elitist or a hardcore gamer or anything like that, but this game is really, really easy on the normal difficulty. But to be honest, I think that's part of the charm of this game. It is very relaxing and enjoyable just to solve some of the stress-free puzzles. There is a hero mode that you can play, but really the only thing that changes is that you take more damage and hearts don't drop. To me, that really wasn't the easy part of the game. It was the puzzles themselves. I didn't consult any guides or hints throughout the entirety of the game, and I found most of the puzzles to be quite intuitive. And again, that's not a bad thing, it's just something that you should be aware of. There were a few puzzles that took me a few minutes to figure out, but none of them were overbearing or by any means frustrating. The team stayed true to the concept of making food, except here we're making smoothies instead of actual food. These smoothies make it pretty easy to always be topped off on health and magic, as well as some other bonus effects that I found I used very infrequently, like glow effects or freeze immunity, etc., etc. Much like the echoes, I found that there were some smoothies that were used a lot more frequently than others. But overall, there was a nice mix of different styles of smoothies you could make. Between the smoothies and being able to rest in a bed that I can make basically anywhere, I never felt pressured as far as hearts were concerned, or that I was going to run out of life. There was maybe 2 times in the whole game that I thought, uh-oh, I'm running out of life. Now again, the easy difficulty isn't necessarily a bad thing, it's just something to think about. Feel free to try hero mode if you want more of a challenge, but I don't think your experience with the game will be that much different. You guys know I love my video game music, and I really could never do a video without talking about a game's soundtrack. Echoes of Wisdom has an interesting soundtrack that I can't quite decide if I like or not. It was composed by Hajime Wakai, who also did work on Pikmin and The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, which is unfortunately one of my least favorite Zelda games. On one hand, I really like that the soundtrack plays homage to older Zelda games, and we hear hints of themes from all the other Zelda games, as well as certain assets that are unique to Echoes of Wisdom. For instance, the Hyrule Castle theme in Echoes of Wisdom has a very familiar Zelda feel, if that makes sense, and it's quite peaceful to listen to. However, once we enter the still world, I find that the music gets quite bland. It's kind of the same tone over and over in all of the different riffs, and it just seems a little bit repetitive and got not so great to listen to in my opinion. However, the boss music inside of the riffs was fantastic. It perked me right back up and had the same feeling as older Zelda games, with all the anticipation, drama, and different feelings to get your hands sweating throughout the whole fight. Personally, I could have done with some of the more dark and eerie music as opposed to the happy and cheery themes that take up most of this game, but I can understand that this was the feel that they were going for, and I can't necessarily fault them for that. Overall, it's kind of a cop-out, but I would give the music a solid B grade, as it wasn't really anything to write home about, but it definitely was not the worst game music I've heard, especially in a long time. The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom is an interesting take on Zelda that doesn't necessarily fit into the norms of a Zelda game. This is definitely far from the worst game I've played, even within the last year. And for those of you who are looking for more of a laid-back experience with all the same puzzle-solving, open-world adventures, while also not having to take it too seriously, Echoes of Wisdom might be the game for you. I spent approximately 19 hours playing through the game, an additional 5 or so hours doing some extra exploration, trying to finish out all of the 127 echoes, filling out the entire map, and doing other various random things. Is the 25 hours of gameplay that you get worth the $60 price tag that Echoes of Wisdom carries? Probably not, but if it ever goes on sale, it's definitely worth picking up this game and adding it to your collection. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and if you made it this far, consider leaving a like, and if you enjoy my content, consider subscribing. It's the best way to help me out. I really enjoy making these videos and want to continue doing that, and subscribing shows that, well, you guys like the stuff that you see, so I appreciate it, and we'll see you guys in the next one.